This is not as much fun as I remember.
When it comes to employee training, most people think boring. You know what I mean. You're sitting in a conference room or classroom, listening to someone tell you something that doesn't really pertain to your job, trying not to fall asleep. Lucky for me, I've had some different employee training experiences. I was an instructor pilot in the US Air Force. I taught people how to run marathons. I even helped people how to build rocket ships at SpaceX. Even if you haven't had experiences like that, there's still inspiration everywhere on how to make great training, especially in movies. So today, I want to break down the 80s classic Top Gun. The reason why Top Gun is perfect is because it's actually about a school. So, what I want to do today is break down some key moments in that movie for inspiration for you to make amazing employee training every day. Let's go.
Gentlemen, this is Hop 19. Multiple aircraft, multiple bogies. Your training is half over. The competition for the Top Gun trophy remains tight. First place, Iceman. Second place, Maverick. Just 2 points behind.
This is a great clip because it shows two incredibly important ideas for making great training. You might have missed it, but the first comes when Jester says, "Gentlemen, this is Hop 15." He's referring to the fact that this is the 15th flight of their program. They're almost halfway through. And then he goes on to say that in this flight, they're talking about having multiple aircraft, multiple bogies. And so you get this sense that this isn't just a one-time thing where everybody just dove in. There was a deliberate plan of several different training engagements, each that built in complexity. And that's one of the key things that anyone can do in training. Think about it with onboarding a new employee. When you bring them in, you bring them onto the shop floor, you bring them into the office, you don't want to just say, "Here you go," and drop a whole bunch of stuff on them. You don't want to start by teaching them the most complex thing they could ever need to know. What you want to do is start from the foundation. What's the first thing an employee needs to do? And then slowly build it up from there so that they can get mastery in one skill and then use that mastery to not only get excited and feel a sense of accomplishment and worth, but then use those skills to go to the next level and then the next level of mastery. Training that tries to just put it all into one single training engagement is never going to work, especially with complex skills. And so really good training starts with this idea that we need to break things out, starting from simple, going to more complex, so that people get excited and want to move forward. The other really great thing that comes up in this clip is the idea that this is a competition. Jester says, where people are, who's ranking first, second, third. And that's just a great thing that anybody can do in training as well. Because if there's one thing that gets people engaged and excited, it's the idea that something is a competition. When you're training people, really what you're trying to do is create connections inside the brain. That's what learning is. It's building new connections in the brain. And connections in the brain are primarily made through one of two mechanisms, either repetition or emotion. Repetition is a whole other thing. I talk about that a lot. But emotion is a really simple way to just get people feeling excited and passionate. And, oh my gosh, I have to remember this information. And, we have big examples of emotion. I've been to Tony Robbins seminars where he's trying to create massive change in individuals over a weekend. And while I was there, I actually walked on hot coals. Now, you can't have people at your company probably walk on hot coals, but what you can do is just have a little competition in your classroom training. Think about it however you want to. Divide it up into one half versus the other, different tables. Who can answer a question first? Who can come up with the most examples? Simply making a competition really drives a lot of great employee engagement. Well, now, both of those were examples of kind of, training in discrete situations, but what about training during every day? Is there a way that we can, take the things that you're doing today and turn them into a way to train people? The truth is, there absolutely is, and Top Gun actually shows us how.
Aircraft 1 performs a split S? That's the last thing you should do. The MiG's right on your tail. Freeze there, please.
When I was a pilot, every single flight ended with a debrief. And in fact, some of the fighter pilots I know would talk about having a 1-hour flight and then a 4-hour debrief. You notice in that clip that the planes just move a couple of frames and then they pause it and have a whole discussion. That's the level of minute detail that fighter pilots often get into, of seeing every single second of an engagement as a chance to learn. Now, you don't need to go to that extreme, but there's some really simple ways that you can take the things you're doing every day and turn them into a chance for amazing training. Whether it's the end of a shift, the end of a project, you can always pause and just ask some questions. Something as simple as doing a start, stop, continue analysis. You know, if we want to be doing this better, what do we need to start doing? What should we stop doing? And what do we want to continue doing? Those kinds of simple ways. And even just asking, hey, that happened, good or bad, what were you thinking? Any decision that is made is a chance for learning, because it gives you that opportunity to kind of ask the question of, you know, why was that decision made? Which ultimately is what a lot of good training comes down to. You're trying to teach new people why experienced people are making the decisions that they're making. It's such an important thing to think about when you're training. It's more than just the actions that you're taking, the systematic things that you do, especially in the knowledge economy. There's a lot of stuff where, you know, it's all locked up in our heads, and we need to be able to deconstruct that, which leads us to, in my opinion, is one of the best quotes in movie history.
The MiG has you in his gun sight. What were you thinking at this point?
You don't have time to think up there. If you think, you're dead.
Well, that's a big gamble with a $30 million plane, Lieutenant.
All training requires an instructor, but what makes a good instructor or a good coach? Maverick right there just pointed out that he probably actually wouldn't be a very good teacher. You see, most actions are actually driven by unconscious thoughts and behaviors. Earlier, I talked about, you know, those neural patterns, those neural connections that you're trying to build, and that's what learning really is. Well, those connections of neurons, what they do is they build up these mental models for how you act, how you make decisions during your day-to-day life. And being able to say why you're making certain decisions is a really, really critical skill, and it's really how you learn. I think, you know, anybody who's ever been in a high stakes sales meeting, probably, you know, the new salesperson goes up to the experienced salesperson and simply asks them, you know, how did you know to give that response? How did you know to steer the conversation that way? And the experienced salesperson just kind of says, well, I don't know. It's just a feel thing. You have to feel the room. That's not going to cut it. There's no way for that new salesperson to really learn what they're supposed to do. And so if you want to have really good training, it's about analyzing those unconscious decisions and figuring out why you made those decisions. And it can be really hard to do. So if you're an experienced person trying to think about training, you know, when you create a checklist of all the different things, find the different decision points that someone would make and try to analyze like why you're making certain decisions. What's the thought process going in there? And if you're a new person, this is really critical. You have to be willing to be the dumb person in the room and ask the question. That's why I love my job as a learning professional and helping people create training, is I always get to be the dumb person in the room and just say, hey, why'd you do that over there? What caused you to say yes versus no, go left versus go right? Those are the kinds of questions, getting into people's brains, that really, really makes great training. So as you can see, even a movie made 30 years ago can offer us a lot of great inspiration and insight into what makes great training. I hope you like this video. If you want to see more like it, go ahead and subscribe. We're going to be putting up a lot of new content to help you make the training in your organization phenomenal. Thanks.